Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and this time you made me watch Daimajin, a giant monster movie, a Japanese film that I watched subtitled. This came out in 1966 and was requested by Caleb. This is a genre that I have not spent a whole lot of time with and have been curious to kind of spread my wings with it a little bit. When Eric was living with me, I watched a lot more Godzilla things, so I have some of that under my belt now. I watched a couple of the sequels and offshoots of the original 1954 film, which I am pretty familiar with. I've seen that 3 or 4 times now, and I adore that movie. And I've now seen the much more recent Shin Godzilla, which I also really loved. Of course, I've seen all of the new American Godzilla movies, including Godzilla vs. Kong. So I've gotten my feet wet in this a little bit here and there, but I appreciate Caleb for throwing something at me that I had never heard of before. This is apparently the first of a trilogy, and after watching this, I'm curious to see what might be done with sequels. This movie, this story, I would put in the category of a fable or a parable. It has a lot of things in common with Godzilla, as I imagine a lot of these different monster movies do. Of course, there is a lot of slow build-up to finally seeing the monster in action. It is very much about knocking humanity down a peg. It's about punishing us for our hubris. Godzilla, at least initially, and continues to be in a lot of things, but was all about our trying to control the world around us and science, and not live with nature, but try to be master of nature without appreciating our place in it. And we accidentally create Godzilla, and he punishes us for that. And so man creates an angry god, and that god in turn punishes us because we have tried to be God ourselves. And in this case, it's much more religion-driven in the first place. So Godzilla has, of course, the word God in there, is a god that we made. Daimajin is an ancient god that just exists already, that a certain tyrant in this movie who doesn't believe in that god or really any gods thinks is, it's just a myth, like a myth inside of a myth, and that he can control everything around him. And so it is in a way still that man trying to control nature thing, but what he's being punished for is, I guess, partly like not believing in the nature of things and thinking that he's above it all. And I think a lot of the reason that these monsters are so huge is to show the relative tininess of human beings. It's to show us how small we really are, and that we have a place in nature, and that we're not supposed to just be masters of it. But I think it's also something of of kind of a revenge thing, where it's about people who do terrible things to others getting their comeuppance. And so this is an angry god. This is a vengeful god. This is a god that only shows up when injustice is being done. And I think it's one of those parables that's saying that, yes, there is a lot of injustice in the world, but nature is set up in such a way, whether you believe in God or not, whether you buy into a religion, nature seems to be kind of set up in such a way where there are actions and consequences, and the universe will punish a person for not treating people justly. Whether you believe that is universal or not, I think that is kind of what this movie is saying. At the end, justice does prevail, even though good, innocent people absolutely suffer. What happens in this film, it's a real simple movie. It's a real short movie. It's about an hour and 25 minutes or so. It falls into that giant monster movie mode, but only in the third act. I suppose a lot of monster movies are this way, where there's, again, a slow build-up, and It's all about creating anticipation and tension as we're waiting to finally get to the giant monster, and I think that pays off beautifully in this. I think it's absolutely well worth the wait. Before we get there, it's much more of a samurai movie, and I haven't seen that integrated as much in a thing like this, and it's got a little bit of political intrigue in it. There is a Shakespearean quality to this, and so it's about a small village where there is a benevolent lord who is ruling, who runs things, and when there's an earthquake and you have a priestess and her religious followers, they think that the Daimajin is about to come out right then, and they do a ritual and pray to kind of pacify this god that's in a statue that from far away looks like Batman, with its it's got things on the sides that make it look like it's got bat ears, like a Batman head. When you get closer to it, it doesn't look like Batman anymore, and that is either successful or it was just an earthquake in the first place. I like the ambiguity until we get toward or to the third act of whether or not the Daimajin is even real. We, the viewer, know that it has to be if you look at the poster, because of course you know at some point this thing is going to come alive and start wreaking havoc, and you're going to have this enormous statue that's destroying things and rampaging. But before that happens, just within the story, there's kind of a question of just how fantastical this might get, and whether that thing is just a statue. And of course, the bad guy doesn't think that it's real, and he ends up staging a coup. He works for I guess he's an aide to the Lord, to essentially the king of the land, and he stages a coup and he kills him, and the Lord's children have to be raised without him, and then we jump to 10 years later. And you kind of expect the giant monster to maybe rampage for a minute at the beginning, but that doesn't, again, end up happening, and we're not really sure whether that was just an earthquake. And then 10 years later, we find out that we have kind of a Lion King Scar situation where this evil lord has taken over, and it's just hell for everyone involved, and it's the right time for another coup or some kind of a rebellion to happen. And indeed, of course, as you might expect, it's going to, but not until the Daimajin finally ends up rampaging. And what ultimately causes that is that the priestess that we saw at the beginning of the movie, and I think she is she probably has the most presence of anybody in the film. I like the actress who plays her quite a bit. She goes to the Lord and says, you've got to stop enslaving people, and because all of the men, the poor men in this village have been enslaved in order to do backbreaking labor for this guy, and as you might imagine, it's really violent, it's really brutal. The movie, by the way, doesn't pull any punches at all. There's some blood, there's some very horrendous and disturbing images of slaves being beaten, and there's an old lady whose eyes get gouged out. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a pretty rough movie, and I think all of that imagery is really powerful and is necessary. I don't think that it's gratuitous for the sake of the story that's being told. It needs to go to those places because first of all, we really need to hate this guy so that we'll be glad when the Daimajin finally does show up and wreak havoc on his land, this place that he's just absolutely ruined. And so, we want him to suffer under the wrath of this vengeful god. And the stakes need to be that high. Of course, we need to have a good sense of contrast between the way things were under the benevolent dictator and where we're at now with this horrible fascist guy. And so there's this I don't know, it's a really moody movie. It's a really suspenseful film. There's a couple of scenes where you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's really effective. One of those is the priestess going to the evil lord, and yet there are a couple places where you think he's going to kill her, and he doesn't. And then at the end of the scene, he finally does, and it's a gut punch, man, and it's really sad. This lady comes in and says, and warns him, the Daimajin is going to come out, and it's going to destroy you. Like, this can't last forever. I think part of what this movie is about too is how these kinds of regimes are not sustainable, and if you take away all of a person's freedoms, they're going to lash out again. This is not the way that man was evolved to live, or man was created to live, however you want to look at it. And of course she's right, and he doesn't believe her. And what I like about that is, even if the statue didn't come alive, he still would not be able to hold that power forever. Whether you think that's because the world really at the end of the day is just, or if it's just kind of the nature of people. Like, he's one person who is all about power and all about control, and at the end of the day, there are more peasants than there are him and his followers, and at some point he's going to get taken down. You can't treat people like that forever. And there's a place where he pulls out a gun and says, this is probably my favorite scene, where he goes, besides some stuff with the Daimajin at the end, he goes, if your God is real, he will stop me from shooting this gun, and I won't be able to kill you. And he fires, and she thinks she's going to die, and it turns out that he didn't put a bullet in the gun. And then he kills her anyway. And like I said, it's a really disturbing, really, really sad kind of scene. And meanwhile, you have a couple of characters that are trying to find a way to take this guy down. One of them is the son of the Lord from the beginning, and then there's also a samurai who tried to stop the coup at the beginning, who does not seem to age, I don't think, and they both end up getting captured as they're trying to find a way to take him down. They fall into a trap, and they're almost basically crucified at the end, and or not crucified, but they're strung up, and they're going to be killed. I forget in what way, but luckily, the sister of that kid who's 18 now, again, the brother and sister of the original benevolent lord, she goes to, with the help of this little kid who's wonderfully proactive and is trying to keep his father from being killed, who is a slave. And anyway, it's a little more involved than I let on, I suppose. But anyway, they go to the Daimajin, and they pray for it to stop all of this horribleness. And it only ends up coming out after they've prayed to it, which is kind of curious. So after the priestess gets killed, the evil lord says, go to his men, go to the statue and destroy it. And they're like, yikes, I don't want to do that, but I guess we're just following orders. We have to do what our master says, or awful things are going to happen to us. So they go to it, and they drive a nail into its head. And this is the most provocative and memorable image in the movie. when they hammer into its head, it starts bleeding. And I don't know how much I trust the subtitles with this movie. Like I said, I watched it subbed and not dubbed. There is a dubbed version of this. On YouTube, there's a subtitled version. That's where I watched it. And it's a really good transfer. So I recommend that if you don't mind watching a Japanese movie in subtitles. And they, like I said, they begrudgingly go to the statue, and I thought that the god was supposed to be under the statue and not in the statue, but the way they talk about it earlier, there's a couple of inconsistencies like that, where sometimes we talk about the Daimajin like it's a god, and sometimes we talk about it like it's God, like it created the world. I do not know which it is supposed to be. If we have a pantheon of gods, or if this is indeed supposed to just be God, or if God is shorthand for a god, I'm not sure. But I really expected it to come out as soon as it gets the nail in the head, and that doesn't happen. The ground opens up and swallows those guys, but it's not until the girl comes and asks it to do something, and it finally comes out, and it is a really memorable monster. It starts off as just stone walking, and then like it's not goofy. I really like the production values in this movie, or at least like it didn't feel goofy while I was watching it. Like a lot of it is the really ominous music. The Daimajin has a fantastic melody. Like there's a really great there's a really great bit of score that's specifically for the Daimajin. At first, it sounds like Three Blind Mice. I'm like, it's rampaging to Three Blind Mice, and this is really silly. But then as that piece kept going, I was really wrapped up in it, and I had it in my head for the rest of the day after I watched it. And anyway, then it gets this kind of like green, angry, like samurai face, and that's really memorable and menacing. And there's some really great model work in the area where it is rampaging and killing the bad guys. It seems to be kind of killing indiscriminately, though. It has come out because, again, injustice has been done, and it's going to keep going even after it has killed the evil lord. And of course, the way the evil lord dies is the poetic justice kind of way, where like I kept waiting for it to take the big nail out of its forehead, and it does that. I was like, of course it's going to take the big nail out of its forehead. That's how it kills the evil lord. But it was predictable in the best way possible, I suppose. Like I kind of saw that coming, but that's also what I was hoping it would do, and so that was pretty satisfying. And then it almost steps on the kid, and it's got the kid under its foot, and I think it's the girl who cries, who like weeps on it, and the tears make it change its mind about continuing its rampage, and it stops, and it turns into a ball of light and just kind of flies away, and then it goes back up to its mountain where it looks like Batman from far away. And it's got that really classic Japanese Weto thing, where emotion saves the day, and we're supposed to be, wrapped up in the sadness and the tragedy of it. But yeah, overall, I liked this movie quite a bit. I don't have a lot more to say about it. I guess a lot of this was synopsis, but I know this is a thing that probably a lot of people haven't heard of and don't know about. I don't think it's quite as good as the original Godzilla, but it's interesting the things that it has in common with that, and also the ways that it diverges. I am certainly feeling it. I would recommend this, and like I said, I'm going to try to remember to put the link to this movie in the description. You can watch it for free on YouTube. At least right now, there's somebody that has it up, and it was easy to go and watch. But if you like these kinds of movies, it's definitely a thing I would recommend to you. And I don't know that it's a terrible introduction to this sort of thing either. here, because it's a nice blend of a couple of different genres. But that's going to be it for me today. Thanks a lot for watching. If you would like to make a request for a off-the-cuff movie review or an off-the-cuff comic review, you can join the $15 tier on Patreon. That's patreon.com/geekvolution. And just know that I have a big backlog right now, and I'm also going to have to take a hiatus within the next couple of months when my wife delivers our twins. So I'm doing what I can right now. I'm averaging about one a week. Like I said, big backlog. There's about there are like 16 people at that tier right now, plus a couple of other people who have just done one-time requests. So just know that going in if you choose to do that, and I will get to everything as soon as I can. In the meantime, I was Captain Logan. Thanks for watching, and leave your comments if you have seen this movie. I would be curious to know what other folks think of it. I will see you next time. Later, folks.